Hey everybody, welcome back. I am with resident sleep expert and one who has ended up there kind of the way one of you guys would, which is having to deal with sleep and trying to figure out why no one's been able to help him. He's become a good friend and he is a true warrior fighting for conscious capital and doing all kinds of really cool things in the world. Mitchell Stevko, the co-founder of the Sleep Companion, which he co-developed with his wife, Dr. Olga Stevko, who has amazing superhuman powers and have developed something really, really cool. So we're going to talk about sleep because it's really the elephant in the room, and if you don't have sleep, you're not going to be able to be healthy, period. Mitchell, welcome to the summit.
Thank you, Pedram. It's very exciting to be part of it. And again, congratulations on your film Origins. I saw it. I recommend it to everybody. It really helps guide us all to a healthier lifestyle, along with, of course, getting a great night's sleep.
Amen, man. Thank you very much. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, my first movie, Vitality, had a lot to do with sleep. It was, you know, the 4 pillars of diet, exercise, sleep, and mindset.
Yeah.
And we said, look, if you can't have all 4 of those wheels turning, you know, you're off the side of the road. And what happened inevitably was most people are like, okay, what do I eat? What do I eat? You know, how do I get my 6-pack abs? You know, should I do CrossFit or this, that, and the other? And I know I'm stressed out. Everyone seemed to sweep sleep under the rug.
Okay, 5 times fast.
Yeah, I don't stand a chance. You know, and it was one of these things that was like, no, you're missing it. Sleep is where all the magic happens. So yeah. I'd like to get into your backstory a little bit because you've had a circuitous way of becoming a sleep expert. And that way we can dive in and really start talking about why sleep is so important.
Well, I appreciate that. And like sleep literally is the poor stepchild that nobody wants to pay attention to because it's hard. It's very multifactorial, just like weight is often can be very multifactorial. I did not want to be a sleep expert. I was forced to be a sleep expert because for 30 years I suffered from incredibly debilitating insomnia. Starting from around the age of 7 or 8, I noticed that I just couldn't shut my brain off. My mind, I was a weird little kid. My mind would think about big things like the nature of the universe. And oftentimes I'd spend an hour and a half to sometimes most of the night up. And it progressively got worse and culminated when I got involved with helping a lot of companies and I'd travel around the country. And that got it to the point where I literally just had the coming to you know, moment that so many health experts have, where I woke up in a hotel room 2 in the morning. I was having heart palpitations. I couldn't breathe. I realized what that was actually a moment of apnea later, where you have that sudden not breathing, thinking I was going to die and going, what is this all about? And I literally called my boss the next day and asked if I could take a sabbatical, and he said no. And then I asked again, and he gave me yes. And then right after that, I quit, and I spent 4 years looking for what the solution was, because I tried the prescription pills, I'd tried the melatonin, I'd tried the therapy, I'd tried everything I could think of, and I mean, literally, sleep is what we do to our prisoners when we take them and try to get them to make them crazy. We just stop letting them sleep. Now we have to do it mostly in countries outside of the U.S. now, but that's literally what we do to our worst enemies. Is we prevent them from sleeping, because all the studies tell you literally would go insane if you can't get enough sleep, and your health deteriorates in all possible ways. So I went on a 4-year journey, found the solution. Fortunately, much thanks to my wife, after a lot of trial and error. She has her own private practice, and over 10 years, she's refined this to the point where literally 99% of the people she sees privately there's some like 70 plus types of insomnia. She gets results for them, and we've now productized this solution and are getting it out to as many people as we can to help them sleep.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, sleep is something that I used to take for granted. I'd put my head down and knock out. I still do. But then this little baby showed up in our world, and I mean, I would have given the PIN code to my ATM any given night if he would just stop crying sometimes, right? And it's just, you don't realize what kryptonite sleep can be until it's missing. And so if you're listening to this right now and you have sleep problems, I'm sure you're perking up your ears. And for those of you who are listening to this who don't particularly have sleep problems on your own, you know someone who does, and this information is going to be tremendously valuable for them, not just for their sanity, which is probably a cool thing to maintain, but also just for their longevity and their overall health. I mean, people die earlier when they're not sleeping. So let's talk about how big of a problem it is, and let's get into kind of the dun dun dun.
And I would like to expand this to everybody, because not only for people you know, most people I've met are still chronically undersleeping, even the ones that don't feel like they're having sleep problems at least a bit. And sometimes even if you just add 30 minutes each night to your sleep regimen, you may notice you're not needing caffeine. You may notice, so I'm speaking to the other half of you that don't have insomnia, you're probably still not getting enough sleep. And we'll talk about the Stanford and Harvard study. So I invite everybody to listen to this presentation, because I really do believe sleep is almost the magic elixir. And even on Deepak Chopra, who everybody knows was on Dr. Oz, he said, you know, for longevity and true health, we focused for 40 years on diet and exercise. He said sleep and stress reduction are actually more important to your overall health and longevity than diet and exercise. And yes, they're all important. And if you're not getting the restful sleep, like for me, when I finally got sleep, it was like a new world opened up. It was like colors were brighter, and the flowers smelled better, and just I was more effective. I was a better husband. I mean, everything got better. So the stats are that 58% of Americans right now experience some insomnia symptoms, and at least 30 million people are actively being treated for insomnia. And one of the biggest eye-openers when I first started doing the research, and you see all the books back here, I've got every book on sleep that's ever been published in the last 15 years. I mean, when I decided to commit to saving this for myself, I was all in. And I even went down to the Stanford Sleep Clinic, and I interviewed Dr. Bill Dement, who's the father of sleep medicine, and worked in a sleep apnea clinic for a year as a consultant, so I could learn even more about that side of sleep. And the average American now, the sleep has dropped from when our parents' generation, Pedram, people were getting about 9 hours of sleep in 1960. It's now down to an average of about 6.5. And the Stanford and Harvard, which are the two most respected sleep clinics, consistently say that 98, 99% of all Americans need between 7 and 9 a night. Now, you each need to find out what your amount is, but, you know, pretty much all Americans, I mean, there weren't 5-hour energy drinks a couple of years ago. There weren't Starbucks 15 years ago. There's been this massive trend about people de-emphasizing and devaluing sleep in our society, and it's a societal epidemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's this like cowboy tough guy thing that goes with sleep. Everyone thinks that they're the anomaly, and everyone I talk to thinks that they're the one that could get away with the 6 hours of sleep because they're somehow bigger, badder, or stronger than the average population. And you know, if you look at the stats, that just doesn't pencil out.
Well, I've been lucky enough to spend the last 30 years working in Silicon Valley, and the motto here is, I can sleep when I'm dead. And my response to that now is, you're going to get your wish a lot sooner than you thought.
Yep. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
It's funny. I got a guy in Silicon Valley who we were hanging out with a little while ago, and you know, I'm in that conscious capital space now too. So I'm hanging a lot with bankers and all that kind of investment crowd, which is new to me. And this guy was on his 5th 5-hour energy drink that day. And so 5 times 5 is 25, and you figure there's only 24 hours in a day. So I'm sitting here contemplating whether or not he's effectively achieved time travel. Going, dude, it doesn't work that way. I mean, his adrenals, later on we got him in the lab and we tested his adrenals, and the dude was dying. Yeah, he was dying. I mean, it was so ugly that he had no idea how bad he was just being propped up by that stuff. And so, yeah, it's an epidemic culturally.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've told but just we'll review it for people. I mean, you know, the health issues are stress and anxiety, cardio, memory loss, obesity, diabetes, lower sex drive, faster aging, more accident prone. The number of sleep related accidents on the highways are amazing. The Valdez thing was related to sleep. A lot of the worst accidents in history have been related to lack of sleep, early death, and autoimmune suppression. But other than that, you know, go ahead, don't pay attention to it, and don't sleep at night.
Yeah. You know, how much of that is like that desensitization as you are kind of reading off this like doom and gloom list of stuff that's like, you know, really, really bad. It's like I found myself going into this place real quickly and that I pulled myself out of like, oh yeah, that sounds horrible, which is exactly what has happened while watching pharma ads on TV. Oh yeah, and it could cause blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, that's fine though, because look, they're chasing butterflies in a field. field. What a beautiful drug. I mean, this is like life and death, guys.
Well, and the most important single thing is, and because a lot of people say, well, you know, that's later and I can worry about it later, but it's how present are you when you come home to see your son or daughter? How present are you or can you be with your spouse? How much are you actually enjoying this gift of life we have every day? And the answer is when you're not sleeping, you're not that much. And you're kind of surviving and you're struggling and you're getting by versus really, you know, you talk about conscious business, but just conscious to, if you're going to be conscious and wake up in the world and be a more present person who truly enjoys everything, you have to sleep so that you can wake up and become awake.
Let's kick it back to origins for a second, because when I was in Africa and it was hot as hell during the day,
yeah,
we had nothing to do but to just chill out. And so myself and the camera crew and, like, you know, a couple of the guys that were with me, they're all like reading books and, like, you know, going through their gear and everything. And everyone else was taking naps. And so within about a week or so, all of a sudden, all my guys are just exhausted. And everyone else is like, what's wrong with you idiots? Sleep. It's nap time. And so we had to, like, get out of our Western American mindset and started to kind of get into the biorhythms that were naturally set into the land over there. And all of a sudden, we started to feel more energy. So I would love to talk about that relationship between sleep and energy, because it's such a direct correlation. It's ridiculous that you know, Starbucks does as well as it does.
Yep. Well, it's not ridiculous because there's such a demand and you're selling a super highly addictive substance at a relatively cheap price with super high margins. So why wouldn't you have one on every corner in the world? And I like coffee. For me, it's an occasional Sunday treat now versus something that's a crutch.
Was coffee a big part of your life when you were suffering with?
Oh my God. When I was in my 20s, I was drinking somewhere between 7 and 10 cups a day. And then that affected my stomach balance, of course. You're a doc, you would know. So the acidic balance in my stomach was just terrible. So I quit that in my late 20s, and I moved to black teas with caffeine in them. And, you know, and I always had to use those things as a crutch. I tried using alcohol to sleep. I sometimes, unfortunately, did combine things like alcohol and Ambien, which is like really a bad idea. You can die from that, literally. And you know, I tried everything. And I tried meditation and I tried therapy, and I just couldn't get the results. I mean, I just couldn't find the off switch for my brain. That was the biggest single thing. And like for women, the most common thing that they think about before they go to bed is whatever I do isn't enough. So if that's the thought that's going through your mind right before you're going to sleep, how well do you think you're going to sleep?
Let's talk about that in terms of biorhythms a little bit more, because when it got dark in Africa, there was nothing left to do. You go to sleep. Now you got your iPad, you got your Android tabs, you got all this light banging away on your forehead, telling you it's time to keep going. You need to go grab some food, whatever it is, you know, in terms of the neurochemistry. The melatonin levels stay low and the pineal gland is activated and it's telling you to march. How much can we intercept and hack into our environment in our modern world to avoid having these problems? I mean, here I am under studio lights, right? I'm just getting bombarded by light, but you know, we're recording this at 10:16 a.m. and that's fine. If I were to do this at night, I would have a hard time sleeping too.
Well, the answer is, you know, we can do something really radical. We can press the off button. Press the off button. And in fact, one of our 7 steps is the relaxer zone, where you basically give yourself a buffer to 30, 60 minutes at the end of the day, where you only do things that are kind of promoting relaxation. It's like the metaphor I use is, you know, I love fast cars, and I have some friends with very fast cars. And even the fastest cars in the world, if you're going 100 miles an hour, it's going to take still 300 or 400 feet to stop. Most people are trying to go from the moment they wake up till the moment they go to sleep, and suddenly expect their body and their mind and their psyche and everything else just to stop suddenly. It doesn't work that way. You have to taper down. And they have seen studies now where the blue lights affect, you know, especially the blue lights on the screens, the blue lights from your phone, all of those things, like you said, suppress melatonin levels, so that you can get blue blockers for the screen. You can get those for your phone too. And you still should take an hour or so that's just for you. I mean, it's like a lot of my clients are women, so it's like, you know, take a bubble bath, read some poetry, listen to some nice light classical music, do things that are relaxation promoting. Don't watch the news, for gosh sakes. Don't read scary stuff or watch scary movies on TV, for gosh sakes. Do things, meditate if you meditate, do some light stretching, do things that can kind of prepare your mind and body to let go for the day. A lot of people journal right before they sleep, or write all the things they're grateful for. That's what few things in life are more powerful than gratitude. I know you've got your spiritual background, and when you're in a grateful state, I mean, basically they've measured that how it positively affects all the systems in your body.
That's huge. Well, see, this is the thing too. It's not like, in the old days, Grandma knew that if you were being ornery, Grandma would say, "Why don't you go take a nap?" Right? Because there was thousands of years.
Right. Early to bed, early to rise. I mean, and like you said, in the origin settings, when it was dark, you may have hung around in the cave and had a fire for a while, but pretty much then you slept.
Yeah.
And it's dark in most societies around the world. I mean, it's dark like 10, 11, 12 hours a night. So Einstein used to sleep 10 to 11 hours a night. That was the smartest man of the 20th century, maybe of all history. And he knew to get 10 plus hours sleep a night, because that was the number he needed to get his brain connecting to things that people had never been able to think about before.
Take that, would-be geniuses. Well, I want to talk about this in terms of resources for a second too, because I think it's a compelling argument. Because when you were, say, let's go back 200,000 years ago, and we've gathered some wood to have a fire, right? How much wood do you want to gather to make a fire that lasts all night so you could sit around and BS with your buddies, versus going down because tomorrow morning you got to go foraging or hunting? And yeah, every once in a while, like, everyone would get together, gather a bunch of fire. There'd be like kind of a bigger bonfire, and they would have like a ritual or a festival, right? And that was like a big deal, but that was nourishing to the mind, body, and spirit in a way, right? But you don't go have a huge bonfire every Tuesday night, because you got to get up and do stuff. And so the problem with modern tech is we don't understand that this bonfire of electricity that's bathing my face right now with photons comes from energy that we somehow gathered. This happened to come from some oil well in Iraq. Yeah. That we've, had a lot of GIs on the line for, fighting for. And so we've become so distanced from where that energy comes from that I think that use of that energy is also overwhelming our balance at night, because at night it wasn't worth it, right? Why would you spend all day looking for wood just so you could stay up all night?
Well, also imagine early man, when they got up the next day, it wasn't just making a deadline, in some cubicle somewhere. It's like, if your reflexes aren't sharp enough, the thing that you're hunting may hunt and eat you. So you probably wanted to be on your game and be alert and aware and awake, and have the mental alertness and the energy that comes from getting enough sleep when you're out foraging, because we were not king of the jungle all the time back then.
No. As a matter of fact, I remember part of this movie shoot, when we'd be out there in the bush, we'd take turns guarding our friends so that they can sleep, because a leopard would come into camp and eat one of your friends' faces off very quickly. Yeah. And so, I'd be sitting there with a high-powered rifle and a little, container of gunpowder to throw in the fire, and that was a reality. So when you sleep, you need to sleep well, and you catch up on your sleep. And that's, for anyone who's been camping, like, the coldest hours are, right before the sun rises. And so, like it or not, when you're out there sleeping on the ground, you're up and you're cold and you need to get going. And whether or not you feel rested or not means nothing, because you're shaking and needing to move around to get some food and get warm in those early hours, usually most of the time. And people think, oh, well, Africa was warm. No, man, it was freezing in the mornings. Yeah. It would be like 40 degrees centigrade during the day, but it was freezing in the mornings. And so it's like, you know what? You sleep when you need to sleep, because when time comes around and you got to start moving, it's too cold and it's too dangerous to be down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how much? What's the total? What's the number? You said 7 to 9. That's for optimal energy, or is it somewhere more than that? I mean, Einstein was definitely rocking more than that.
Yeah, well, the good news is, as you know, and with your background in history, especially from the origins perspective, that we've adapted and we've evolved. And I think we probably did need 10, 11, 12 hours sleep early, man, because there was nothing else to do, for one. Once we invented light, people started being, gas light or whatever, or lamps, people started reading at night and things like that. And so, I think the right thing is the 7 to 9 range that consistently comes up for Stanford. The trick is to find out what it is for you. And I wish I could tell you that there's just you could stick your finger in a thing it can read and tell you, Pedram, your number's 8 hours, and Mitch, your number's 7. Science hasn't invented anything like that yet, and even if you go to an overnight sleep clinic, they won't be able to tell you an exact number for you typically. It's the two main tests that I've used. I mean, I use muscle-resistant testing, and you're probably familiar with that, applied kinesiology, and that can be very accurate. So if you could work with somebody, especially it's nice to have somebody else read for you. I also find for a lot of people, it's kind of the number that they need on the second week of a vacation. Like when you don't have to get up once you've kind of recovered from your first week. Now, I know that's not helpful for a lot of Americans because you don't get a second week of vacation in a row. But if you have, it's kind of, and I also find women just tend in general, and I want to be sexist in a positive way, they tend to be more intuitive. And one of the things I ask all of our clients is just kind of close your eyes and don't close your eyes, of course, if you're listening to this while you're driving. But if you just kind of close your eyes and imagine a blank screen in front of you and just ask kind of your unconscious mind, you get a little bit grounded and say, what is the right number for me? And count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and a number comes up. And like my number just came up on my imaginary screen, which is 7.5 hours. That's my magic number. And if you can't find a magic number, I just recommend everybody start with 8 and do 8 for 3 weeks, along with all the 7 strategies that great sleepers use. And then at the end of 3 weeks, kind of reassess yourself. Am I really feeling great now? And then maybe try to up it a half an hour and see how that works, or lower it a half an hour and see how that works. I met this wonderful woman who's like at this conference that you and I were last weekend. She's in her 60s and she sleeps 4 hours a night, and she looks great. She has great energy. She doesn't drink alcohol. She's one of the rare, true short sleepers. There are the people outside the bell curve that just somehow their body, now I don't know if she'll make it to 90 or 100, but you know, at least right now in her 60s, she seems to be doing fine being a short sleeper. I've talked to you, and I know some of these sleep hacking folks and these life hacking guys, and they always like, oh, I'm going to hack sleep, and I'm going to get more out of my day. And I always ask them a couple months later how that's working for them. They said, oh man, I quit that shit. It nearly killed me.
I have never, ever found a supplement, a meditation, a Qigong set, or anything that matches the value of sleep for rejuvenation and regeneration. And I've sat at the feet of the Dalai Lama. I mean,
it's magic, man.
Yeah, and it's something about pulling out of the driver's seat and letting your subconscious and your unconscious kind of take over and kind of clean up the amusement park after all the guests have gone, right?
I like that metaphor too. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a fiasco. I mean, days are filled, the world is toxic, stress is increasing, and the downtime is where, we can find our sanity. And also, as you know better than any, is, we found this thing called the glymphatic system now, where, the brain has a detox pathway of its own, and it only works when we're in deep sleep, where things kind of swell and then the cellular junk basically cleanses out, so we get all those amyloid plaques and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's directly pointing to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all these kind of degenerative brain diseases. And we're now kind of scratching our heads saying, holy crap, this is amazing. And all it's telling us is sleep, dummies, sleep.
Well, and you've studied Chinese medicine, and in the traditional Chinese medicine system, they believe at certain hours of the night, that's when each system, it's almost like you've got billions of little repair guys going on inside, and they kind of move from one area of your body to the next one. And if you're not asleep during those hours, that repair and restoration doesn't happen. The Chinese medical system's 5,000 years old. I was over at Chinatown yesterday in San Francisco. I saw lots of 90-year-old plus people, doing Qigong and Tai Chi. I don't see too many Western folks in their 90s, out and active and about on a Tuesday morning. So I think there's something to that, and they really understand the value of being asleep during those hours. And
that's a wonderful point, actually, that I'd like to just stay on for a second. I know it's a slight digression, but the difference between the 90-year-old Chinese person doing their Qigong and Tai Chi and the Western person who maybe does that or does yoga is that as a Westerner, we tend to do it symptomatically, be like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out, I got to go to yoga. Where it's like, I cut my arm, now I need a Band-Aid. Whereas in the architecture of how the Chinese do it, is they're in the park doing this every day, so they never need to have the Band-Aid, right?
Exactly.
And it's a really different way of looking at life. That it's like the tortoise and the hare, and we might be ahead right now, but look at cancer, look at autism, look at all the crap that we're dealing with. And the Chinese have their own issues because of air pollution, right? But like built into the fabric of ancient cultures is this rest and relaxation, where that's kind of where they operate from instead of where they like retreat back to after they realize that they've, you know, spent it.
And it's that connection to nature. I mean, you know, they're always doing it out around in nature as near as they can be to trees, to parks, whatever else, because they understand that connection, and that we still don't understand the energy fields that we just haven't, or only slightly beginning to measure now in science. You know, yeah, we can measure your blood pressure, we can measure what's in your blood, but we can't measure the effects, the direct effects of just spending it, you know, the 20 minutes, the vitamin D3 with the sunshine, the connection to the trees, the connection to nature, that kind of sense of peace that comes from knowing we're not isolated, that we're one part of everything.
And that's the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, we feel like by sleeping we're missing out on this kind of vapid, crazy world. And like, you know, I missed the headline that Britney Spears did this thing because I was sleeping. I'm such a loser, right? And the real question is, who cares, right? Like, why is any of that important? What's important is your ability to like be fully embodied and alive and powerful. If you look at our, you know, antediluvian ancestors, those guys were rocking, man. They were, you know, they were handling lions with spears.
Yeah,
that's no joke.
Ben Franklin had the same 24 hours that you and I did, and so did Albert Einstein. So it's not the number of hours you're awake; it's the quality of that life. And having been somebody who didn't have that quality for 30 years, didn't have it in my relationships, didn't have it as much in my work as I could have been. It's like, you know, I was pretty freaking effective and productive. But then I went to a point where I'm doing it from an asleep standpoint. I've started, you know, several businesses. I've reached out into helping a bunch of people in different areas. And it's like, it's been a quantum expansion of my capabilities, quantum attraction of different levels of friends. But just because of that, you know, I'm here, I'm present now. And I don't need anything to get me through the day except myself and my intentions and how I want to be in the world.
That's beautiful. And okay, so because you are a banker economy guy who has now become a sleep guy because of necessity, I think this is a quick point where I'd like to talk about this, because if you guys have been, I don't know where you guys are at in the summit, what you've heard or not heard yet, but this notion of externalities keeps coming up in the summit. And so, you know, the oil company says, you know, we got all these profits coming in because they factored out the externalities of the mercury in the water and the pollution in the air and, you know, the price of the village they just slaughtered. And so it's like that stuff doesn't show up on their spreadsheets. They look really good to investors, right? But if we start factoring in all of the externalities, it seems like in terms of personal health and psychological health and longevity, sleep is that one externality that we are the quickest to move off of the sheet and be like, look, I've got these 19 deadlines and I'm going to hit them because, you know, I've got goals and I've made declarations and I've got pride or whatever, and I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that seems like the most important externality that needs to be brought back in under the fold.
Yeah, and well, Harvard just did the largest study on sleep ever, and they did it with professionals in the pharma industry, which, you know, are pretty health conscious people. If you've met folks in the pharma, I don't always agree with everything they're doing, but they're people that tend to, you know, they start out thinking they're doing good. And they studied over 1,000 people, and they found out the costs to the corporation every year of absenteeism and presenteeism due to sleep issues was $2,200 per employee per year. Wow. So when I'm talking to the more savvy employers now, most of which self-insure, they get it. And they are promoting actively programs for mindfulness and sleep and stress reduction, yoga, especially, you know, the new media companies like Google and Facebook. I mean, they get it. And yes, they still want their workers to work, and they realize that stress management and sleep are essential components to productivity and preventing burnout. Because once you find a great team member, the last thing you want them to do is burn out now. Yeah. So I don't know if the oil companies are that savvy yet. I haven't talked to their departments, but here in the Silicon Valley, people are, that level of consciousness is starting to raise. And I believe, honestly, and you and I have had this discussion, that the corporate world probably has more motivation than anyone else to have people be healthier, because it drops right to the bottom line for them in terms of reduced healthcare costs, increased productivity, and reduce turnover.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, and a lot of people are new to us, well.org does a lot of corporate wellness, and at the time of this recording, we have 2,200 companies that we're doing corporate wellness for.
Right.
And these guys, I mean, look, 50% or more of corporate profits right now are going towards healthcare costs, and it's sinking this country. And a lot of it is just, why are your people not sleeping? Why are people eating garbage? Why, it's just the basic lifestyle parameters. And then we turn them around, we look like complete heroes, but it's just like, how do you guys make $10 billion a quarter and you don't understand that sleep's important? So, the oil guys are also your neighbors and their kids go to school with your kids type of thing. And so, one of the big pieces to this whole summit is being hyper inclusive and realizing that, we just took a couple steps in different directions and that's how they butter their bread, and we need to kind of make some course corrections, but there's no like overt, like these guys are evil, let's go get them type of mentality. It's like, let's help everyone come back to a sane place in the middle so we can preserve our health, ourselves, our planet, and have somewhere for our children to be able to hang out and enjoy in the future. So I want to get back to the different kinds, because in Chinese medicine, like if you have trouble falling asleep versus staying asleep, it's different, right? So you got blood sugar issues, you have cortisol, adrenal issues, and all that. So can you give us some wisdom? Because there's a lot of different types of insomnia, obviously, and we can't dive too deeply into all of it here, but let's at least get into some solutions for our listeners.
Well, one of the most things that you're right, there are we've kind of grouped it into 3 buckets for insomnia, and there's sleep apnea, which is where you literally stop breathing while you sleep. That's way underdiagnosed, and just a couple telltale signs you might have sleep apnea would be as if you snore a lot, if your spouse or partner notices that you stop breathing while you're sleeping at night, or if you're kind of gasping for breath during the night, or even when you've slept 8 or 9 hours, you wake up and you're still exhausted. If you have one or more of those symptoms, you really should go get checked for sleep apnea. The good news is that used to be a $2,000, hassle. You'd have to go to a hospital, they'd wire you up, and people would watch you sleep. Now, that's not a very good environment to try to test what your real sleep is like. They now have home tests that are phenomenal. It's like a little thing you wear on your wrist or on your head. It's a couple $100. The data, you get a couple nights of data, you send the thing back. There's a lab I use called sleepquest.com. I'm not paid or endorsed by them. They work with Stanford a lot of the military. They're phenomenal. They're professional. They do a great job. But if you think you have any of those things, get a sleep apnea test and first rule that out.
100%.
Because sleep apnea, when I first started, I said, how come you only have 10% of your patients over on Medicare? He said, well, the unfortunate truth is that people with undiagnosed sleep apnea rarely make it to the age of 65. So part of my job is education. We don't have a solution for sleep apnea. There's great ones out there. There's several kinds now, and please, if you have any of those symptoms, I want all of you to go find a home sleep testing lab. It's easy to do. It's inexpensive. Insurance will cover it most of the time now. You know what we'll do is, and I'll tell Lorenzo this, is there's a sleep apnea questionnaire that we used to have in all of my clinics. Let's include it in the summit here so you guys can fill that out as well. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, Mitchell, but I used to own sleep labs, and I worked with some of the big sleep guys in the country. Yeah, I mean, I'm big on sleep, and I'll tell you one thing. If you're listening to this, if you have any of these symptoms, the mortality rates are ridiculous. Yeah. You will die. I mean, heart disease, stroke. I mean, it's really an unfair thing to do to your family. So it's something that you got to look at. And I'm saying this because most guys will be like, I'm fine, right? And those are the guys that fall over and die and leave widows and children who it's not cool. So getting back to the other problems of insomnia, and I believe in the DSM or whatever the sleep manuals, there's over 70 different types of insomnia. But they tend to throw in 3 buckets: problems falling asleep, problems waking up and getting back to sleep, and then people that have either breathing or excessive movement issues. And so, for falling asleep, one of the most common things people talk about is the busy mind or the monkey mind. They just can't find the off switch for their brain that allows them to relax and fall asleep. And if you'll indulge me, I can teach everybody about a 1 or 2 minute technique that will help them do that. Yeah, let's boogie. And it's essentially just the idea when you're laying in bed, and whenever a thought comes into your mind, turn that thought into a picture and almost kind of freeze it into that picture. And then if another thought comes in, freeze that, turn that into a picture, an image, or a symbol. And just keep doing that as different thoughts come in. And you might find over a few minutes, it's like a computer screen with a number of symbols or images or pictures or icons. And now just imagine that you're dragging and dropping the ones that are positive images or symbols about positive things on one side, and the ones that are less positive or helpful on the other side. And most of the time you'll find if you're not sleeping, probably they're all negative. But in case you have any positive ones, you want to save them. And then one at a time, go ahead and just drop them down and kind of just put them away in their envelope, and just imagine you're dragging and dropping them. And if a new one floats in, picturize it, drag and drop it, put it down until all the negative ones, the ones that are stress-inducing or causing you to worry, are in this folder. And just know that this folder is always there. And when you tell your unconscious mind that it's there, and that you'll be happy to look at it as needed when it's the right time, and now isn't the appropriate time, giving yourself that permission tends to release further issues of having that thought at the time. Some people also sit down and will write down all the thoughts that they have on their mind that are worrying in their to-do list or things, so they kind of just get it out of their mind and out of their body. And then finally, now you might want to take each of the positive images, really bring it up close to you. And if you don't have any positive image, this is the great time for your gratitude. Think about the people who you truly love in your life, the people that truly love you, the pets that love you and that you love, the things that you love about life the most. For me, it's like I get images of my wife and my dog and music and my parents who are past now, but just, you know, all of the great things, and just kind of wash your mind in those positive thoughts as the end of the day. And as you kind of do so, then you can drag those down one at a time till your screen just kind of becomes blank and peaceful. And for a lot of people, this exercise, if you, again, it's practice. You know, Pedram's a master practice. When you do this type of practice, you'll find it's much easier for you to quiet your thoughts, still your mind. And it just takes a few minutes. What was that, 2 minutes? We just did.
Yep.
It's a beautiful practice.
Yep, I love that. I love that, and I love it because it is using modern metaphor. You know, as you track technology, I mean, when we were doing mechanical things, a lot of our metaphors were like, you know, mechanics and clocks and this, that, and the other, and then like steam engines is like, you know, I need the power to go, and it's like the metaphor that we use is also a reflection of the technology we've created. So it's almost this as above, so below. It's like everyone can relate to desktops and computers now because that's where our brains are parked. So if that's the interface, it's a really cool way of doing that. I dig that a lot. I'm going to practice that. I don't have problems falling asleep, but I'm going to practice that anyways to see how it goes for me. And yeah, you guys listening to this, do it. Try it tonight.
It'll help. It's something that can help you right away. And if it doesn't get great results right away, or thoughts keep coming in, just keep freezing them. Sooner or later, your unconscious mind will get tired of sending you thoughts. And if you can do this longer than your mind can come up with new thoughts for you to have. I mean, the average person only holds like 7 to 9 active, 7 plus or minus 2 active thoughts in their conscious storage in the frontal cortex anyway. So take the practice. And this also works if you wake up and have trouble going back to sleep at night. The other things for that, it's really important not to have your melatonin upset. So if you do get up during the night to go to the bathroom, I know especially a lot of guys 40, 50 plus have that issue, you know, get the night lights. Don't turn on any lights when you get up. Or if you do wake up and don't have to go to the bathroom, you know, do the minimum amount of movement you need to do. Keep your movement minimized and use a practice like this. Another thing you can do is progressive relaxation, where you just relax, you know, start relaxing, you know, your top of your head all the way down to your big toe, doing some slow, deep breathing. That can also help do that. But one of the things we have found, though, is for a lot of people, there are, you know, again, the most interesting discovery we found in 10 years of studying sleep is that what often is still causing people not to sleep well are their beliefs about themselves and their beliefs about their sleep. And it's part of why they're not making sleep a priority in the first place.
That's interesting.
And that belief work is often something that you need either to find a professional or find a program that can help address things. Like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the same level it was created at. So if you have a behavioral issue like sleep, like weight, like working out, whatever it is, you have to go a level above to your beliefs, your values, your identity, or even at the level of spirit. That's where you make the big shifts. And that's what we focused our whole last 10 years on, is what are the beliefs that make it hard for people to fall asleep or stay asleep or even prioritize sleep. We both have a mutual friend, JJ Virgin, who travels maybe 200 days a year. I mean, this woman is unbelievable. I get tired just reading her schedule. And yet the one thing she will protect religiously is her sleep, because she knows if she doesn't do that, so she puts sleep first. That's actually the very first one of our 7 strategies, is to put sleep first. one of the things I came up with in the middle of the night was, and I woke up briefly and wrote it and went back to sleep, is sleep isn't the end of your day, it's the start of your day. And every day you have is going to depend somewhat on the quality of your sleep the night before and your ability to manage your energy and your presence and your oxygen and your movement and everything around that foundation of how was your sleep the night before.
One of the metaphors that I've been using over the years that I learned from one of my great masters was this notion of drinking from infinity, and how
I like that. I got to write that down.
Stopping to, yeah, that's a chapter in my next book, because stopping time can get you to this place where you drink from infinity. It's the most rejuvenating. It's like the fountain of youth. And sleep is it. I mean, you've hit it right on the head with everything you're doing, because and you're not this guy that you were a successful banking guy, right?
Yeah, I'm just a normal business guy. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I didn't study the stuff, but because of my issues, I had spent 10 years before finding the solution, trying everything out there. And the last 10 years, I've just said, enough is enough. I'm going to fix this. And now that I fixed it for me, Olga and I want to fix it for as many people as we can, because it's killing our society. It's killing our productivity. It's killing our presence and consciousness. It's reducing the consciousness of society when people are walking around being a bunch of zombies.
And here's something I think a lot of people on this summit can relate to is, you're having, so say, back up to where you were looking for solutions, and you're a smart guy, you've tried almost everything, and then you go to some like young doctor who just came out of Stanford or somewhere, and they're like, well, what you really need to do is take melatonin with this. And you're like, come on, man, I already tried that, right? And so I oftentimes, I'm friends with some of the best doctors in the world. I will listen to guys like you with perked up ears a lot more than some young doc that's coming through with some philosophical thing that they just got out of medical school, because I know you tried everything and you live in the workshop of your life where you would know what worked, right? And that's the thing. And so what works for you might only work for you, not an N of 10,000 people, but it doesn't matter, because if you can say statistically speaking 65% of the people who did this got better, what happens to the other 35%? They're sitting where you're sitting. And so you got to go find out what you got to do.
I got a lot more skin in the game than that young doctor, and I was just also fortunate that I married a doctor. My wife's a medical doctor from Russia. She's had a private practice that she's done for a decade, and she's put this to the test, these strategies and these protocols, with over 2,000 people. So, and probably 20,000 plus hours we were working with people. So, we've seen it across people of different ages, of different races, of different sexes, and we get very high repeated results. Now, it doesn't always work for everyone. And it works for most people, and it's, there's no negative side effects. It's very low cost, and it's just, it's sure better than taking something you're going to be addicted to, spending thousands on therapy that may at best have about a 40, I think the latest results on average cognitive behavioral therapy is about a 40% success rate. That's 8 sessions, $1,600, assuming you find somebody great, it's going to work about a third of the time.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of grim out there, and for people who have these types of problems, it's like you can't not fix it, right? I mean, I know the show must go on and all this kind of crap that we deal with in the modern era, but sleep's where your heart will stop. Sleep is where your brain stops working. You will say something on that important call that like tanks the deal. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know who compromise their careers because the sleep finally catches up with them. And
I started forgetting things. I mean, I used to have to sometimes go in, and as an investment banker, I had to be an expert in whatever industry I was talking with, and not only industry, the 5 or 6 other companies that segment. So I had to, if I was going to add value, I had to really be an expert at a lot of things. And I might be talking now, a big part of my career and the later part was in the internet, but in my earlier career, I might talk to a healthcare company in the morning, a tech company in the afternoon, and a consumer company in the evening. And I literally just started blanking out on stuff. I just started losing it, and that was terrifying. I mean, that was absolutely terrifying that I couldn't have those things on command as needed. And it was one of the other warning signs that I had to go fix this. And there's so many things people can do. I'd like to also spend a minute or two talking about one of our other parts of the protocol that's really important, is the sleep cycle reset. You talked about origins. We are not on regular schedules. The body clock, the circadian rhythms work to your favor if you just let them. And so the third step in our program is a sleep cycle reset, where you basically go to sleep the same time every night and get up the same time every morning. And I know for a lot of the viewers are going to go, but I don't want to do that. And I didn't want to do that either. I was a night owl and an early bird. That doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't.
It's like saying you spend more money than you make.
You can play around with that, but if you just start on one part of our program, we take people through a 30-day sleep camp and just at least for sure get up at the same time every morning. Your body starts going, okay, a natural rhythm. I like this. Oh, this is good. Okay, I'm getting used to this. And it starts telling your body. I normally this morning I woke up at 6:29. 6:30 is my normal wake time. And so I most often wake up between 6:29 and 6:32 without any alarm whatsoever. Now, I will have one as a backup because I don't want to miss great interviews like this with you and a chance to share this with people. But that's how powerful the human body is. And if you give it some routine, and I know sometimes going to bed at night at the same time is hard because of parents and kids or work schedules or social things. But what a lot of people I know do is that they cheat during the week and then try to sleep like crazy on the weekend. You're actually making it worse. That's one of the myths. Don't do that. Try to go to bed and get up at the same time every day. If 8 hours is your number and you got to get up at 6 for work, make that your weekend wake-up time too. That's what my parents did. My parents were up at 6 o'clock every day.
Yeah.
Well, once you have that routine, and if you're away for a weekend on vacation or something and you want to break it for a day or two, great. Occasionally you can do that, but I know so few people. I'd say less than 10% of the people I meet here in the Bay Area follow a disciplined sleeping and waking schedule. And it's one of the fastest and most easiest ways, probably for 20–30% of the people. If you did nothing else other than put sleep first and get your 7.5 or 8 hours, whatever your number is, and get up and go to sleep at the same time, that's gonna, for a lot of you, give it a month and that will solve your problem for a big portion of you.
I love that. So you talked about kind of a micro cycle, and I'd like to just put a little energy into the macro cycle because I see this happen all the time. Is people will go all day, kind of bang through their day and say, well, you know what, I'm fine, I'll just crash tonight, right? Yeah. And then, or they'll bang through all week and say, oh, I'm going to recover this weekend, and Lord knows that never happens. But then I also see that on a bigger cycle where it's like, well, you know what, in March we're going to go to Maui for a week. So I'm just going to make it through this quarter, and then I'm just going to go pass out in Maui. And so it's always like this kind of deferred payment plan towards sleep. And I've never seen it work. I know you haven't because you've been around this block a few times. I mean, if it worked, you wouldn't be having all the problems that people are having in our universe and seeing the fallout. So I know this is a bit reductionist, but I got to ask this question. Is there a single most important thing for anyone listening to this to remember about sleep?
I think you've got to make sleep your priority. If you care about yourself, if you care about your life, if you care about your family, if you care about living the best life, you've got to put sleep first. I mean, put it first because everything else flows from that. It has to be first. Everything I've studied, a decade, 30 years of studying this, put sleep first. And when you do that, putting it first means getting the number of hours you need to and getting up and waking up on a consistent schedule. And if you're still not sleeping well, get a program like mine, go see a sleep therapist, do whatever it takes to get your sleep back into balance because it's going to be the greatest gift you're ever going to have in your life is that feeling I had this morning. I got up right at sunrise, went for a walk along the water, was breathing deeply, felt incredible and alive and here and present. And there's just nothing you can do to replace that feeling or the gift. And when you bring that back to your spouse, to your family, to your friends, bring it into your work life. I mean, sleep's everything. I've convinced that sleep is everything. Sleep is the game. If you get sleep down, then you can do everything else you want.
Talk about origins, right? I mean, the essence of Mother Nature we tap into when we shut down and go into this like undercurrent of all information and life and energy and all these things that rejuvenate and restore us. And it seems to me, at least, that some of the cultural insanity that we've spun into has become untethered from nature and sleep and balance and all these types of things that we not only took for granted, but lived by just a few generations ago. And that lack, all progress isn't good, right? And so, trying to hack sleep, I think, is one of the most insane things you can do. And I'm sure you tried.
I never tried. I was always trying to get more.
Okay, so you were just
read about the sleep hackers. I'm going, this doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Back in the day. Okay, so you were always back on your heels, and we're just trying to catch your breath, figuratively.
Just trying to get enough, and just trying to stay in balance and get some. I mean, I was sick through most of my life. I was, because my immune system was low. Any virus, any cold, any flu, I'd get wild. That was another thing. I've lost, hundreds of hours, maybe even thousands of hours sick unnecessarily because my immune system would not support me. Now it does. Now I get sick maybe once a year, sometimes a bad year twice. And I recover much more quick because I've learned from smart docs about supplements and other things you can do to not have a virus necessarily, be a big interruption in your life. I just see it as something passing through.
Awesome. So sleep gave you that cushion of vitality to offset it all. Mitchell, please tell people where to find you. This isn't like a product plug thing here.
Yeah.
The point is, this is a guy who went through it, figured it out, helped himself, and the stats on what they're doing are phenomenal. So if you have sleep problems, I encourage you to check out what these guys are doing here.
Thank you, Pedram. Our website is thesleepcompanion.com. I love the work you're doing. I love the tribe you've built. I want to do something very special for them. If you go to thesleepcompanion.com/gift, I've written a resource guide that basically explains the 7 strategies of great sleepers. It's my gift to all of you guys. If you'd still like to or want to get our purchase product, which is an integrated program that has audios, videos, and a deeper dive on the resource guide, I'm going to give that to you guys at 2/3 off our normal price. So 2 pay a 47 essentially. And it comes with a money-back guarantee, and it works for almost everybody that uses it. And it's just my mission in life is to get this world back to sleep and back to valuing sleep. So go to thesleepcompanion.com/gift, and we'll take good care of you and give you the 7 strategies that we've seen work consistently across thousands of clients and people that my wife and I work with. And if you want to even go one level deeper and get the audios that will help you shift your limiting beliefs about yourself, about sleep, you'll find it not only changes your sleep, it changes a bunch of other things. You just start to think about things a little differently and more positively. And they use very advanced neuro-linguistic programming, which is a technique to essentially reprogram your unconscious to get the results you want. So I really thank you, Pedram, and I love what you're doing. And any way I can continue to support you and your tribe, I'm all in, man.
Thank you very much, man. I'll tell you one thing, just closing thought, is having lost sleep, having had a child, the thing that was the most profound to me as a young guy who's never been lacking energy was that I found myself on the verge of enthusiasm bankruptcy.
Ooh.
Right?
Write that down, too. Yeah. You're a poet among all these.
It's part of my Taoist tradition, right? My enthusiasm was starting to go away. And then as soon as I realized that there's no way, I just, fix the sleep, baby doesn't let you sleep, but you catch up. And as soon as I did, all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's back. But I saw what I had seen in thousands of patients, and I saw where that bank account started to dwindle and how it was changing my entire personality. And so when you see people being really shitty or, in a bad mood or just pessimistic and all these things, now I look at them differently going like, man, you could use a nap.
Yeah.
Right? It really, really made sleep that powerful. That's why I dedicated a whole, hour to this here in the summit, is like sleep is it. So guys, I don't want to take Mitchell's time anymore. I know you're a busy guy. Check out his solution. We'll get the gift, and we'll put a link to it in the success kit as well, just so you guys can get it there. But check it out. If you are or anyone you know is having trouble sleeping, or if you're getting 6 hours thinking that you're doing well, I promise you a little more sleep goes a long, long way. Mitchell, thank you so much for your time.
Pedram, thank you again, and best wishes through the launch and through this summit.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Mm-hmm.